Hey, everybody, welcome to Pod Casty For Me, the podcast about film, culture, politics, and Clint Eastwood, where we watch every film directed by and or starring American filmmaker Clint Eastwood and explore how they speak to their moment. And to this one, the podcast is hosted by two guys. I'm one of the guys. My name is Jake Serwin.
I'm one of the guys. My name is Ian Ryan.
Can't get rid of him, folks. We've read your emails.
Shake me off.
He's got a sort of a Rasputin-style unkillability. Yeah. That's the only way he resembles Rasputin, to be clear, because of the thing from the museum. How you doing, Ian?
I'm doing all right, my man. I'm excited to talk about this film. It's a fun one, a fun film. How you
I'm doing well, thank you for asking. No, this is a great movie. This movie's a banger. This was like an important film in my Clint Eastwood journey, realizing, I need to watch everything this guy is in, because if any of them are half as good as In the Line of Fire, I need to know about it. Let's bring our guest in. Let's waste no time. For the first time on the show, we've decided to stop wasting time. Our guest today is a writer and academic whose work has appeared in outlets like the Los Angeles Review of Books, Senses of Cinema, Little White Lies, Reverse Shot, Fandor, Paste Magazine, and the Film Stage, and his column, The Action Scene, in Movie Notebook is beyond wonderful to read. It's a terrific place to find something very cool to watch that is almost definitely on Tubi. He's currently working on a PhD in film and media studies at the University of Pittsburgh. Welcome to the show, Jonah Jeng.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, welcome, Jonah.
How you doing?
Good. Doing well.
Good.
You got Wolfgang Petersen feelings? What's your take on this?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I wanted, Das Boot was on my watch list for a long time. I wanted to squeeze it in, but it's 3.5 hours, and I had a particularly busy July, could not make it. So I unfortunately do not have that context.
That's okay, me either. Yeah. Ian, have you seen The Boat?
I have seen The Boat, but
okay,
I'll just say watch Crimson Tide instead.
Oh, okay.
I think it's fine.
Don't worry, I have already.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Jonah. Really happy to have you. Excited to have you as the expert on action cinema. You've been going around calling yourself the best action cinema expert on the internet. He's flexing his muscles right now for the audience. No, but really glad to have you here. And I think when we first started talking about you coming on the show, did you suggest this one? Do I have that correctly? We've been going back and forth.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Part of it was, so actually in line with my action angle, I was kind of leaning toward The Rookie. But then I was like, let's watch some of my Eastwood blind spots around that. And then I finally watched this, and then I watched it again a couple of days ago. But I was like, there's actually a lot to say here, and maybe I'll go with this one. But so that's why I selected it. But originally I was leaning toward The Rookie, but I had my eye on the more action adjacent stuff, and just landed on this one.
Yeah, we just talked The Rookie just a few days ago as we record this, and it's really interesting to look at it. Because Clint's part of the Clint Eastwood thing is that he works with the same people for decades. And so you have his stunt double, Buddy Van Horn, starts as his stunt double, going all the way back to, I don't know if he worked on Rawhide, but certainly Dirty Harry.
Yeah, the 70s flicks.
Then becomes stunt coordinator, then becomes director of a couple of his movies, including Pink Cadillac. And he is the stunt coordinator on... the same guy as the stunt coordinator on whatever, Magnum Force and The Rookie and this movie, which feel like huge leaps in terms of stunt technology. I mean, some of it is just budgetary, but also it's fascinating to see this guy step up so hard the way he does in especially The Rookie, which is an absurd asking Lethal Weapon to hold your beer kind of action spectacle. Do you have any quick Rookie thoughts just right up top here?
It's been a couple of years since I watched it. I actually, side note is I'm glad you guys reached out to me, because I had been finally a couple of years ago. I was like, I should watch through Clint Eastwood stuff. So I was actually going through his filmography, but I stopped halfway through for whatever reason, and then took a year off. And then you guys emailed me. I'm like, I should pick this back up. So
this is beautiful to hear.
So
this is how we find each of our listeners. We email them individually.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to remember. So I think, The Rookie's style is very, very different. The action style is very different.
Absolutely,
it's true.
One thing I really liked about The Rookie, The Rookie also has that kind of, Eastwood kind of metatextual, like reflecting on his own legacy. But I liked how it was like stylistically felt like a 70s movie too. There's like a lot of handheld camera work, like especially like when like Charlie Sheen's like racing the bike to the laundromat, or he's like fighting in the bar. It has this
when he drives the motorcycle through the door of the house, that's a very every which way but loose type of thing to do. I don't know if that actually happens in that movie, but
yeah, we didn't talk about, you're right, that whole fight sequence inside his house is like handheld, spinning around the room, 360, very 70s. You're right.
Yeah, so it like reminded me of stuff like the Gauntlet and like Magnum Force 2, just like the way it's shot. There's a rough hewn kind of like sort of live wire feel to it, and I appreciated that. And obviously, this one's very different, so I'm sure we'll touch on that a bit. But
yeah, we'll get into it.
Yeah,
but before we talk about the movie, we do of course need to do our very important, very good segment. No one's asked us to stop doing this. The 2 questions. Jonah, were you able to come up with a question or 2 for us here on the show?
Yeah, it's like a 2-parter. Can I just ask them?
Let's do the 2-parter. The 2-parter
He's
question.
He's something called the psychopath test. So I'm interested to see what this is going to be.
So the turtle's on its back. And then what do I do?
Oh, yeah. So my 2 questions are just what's the hardest you've ever laughed watching a film? And then what's the most terrified you've been watching a film?
Well, I'm just going to jump right in here. Hardest I've ever laughed watching a film, probably Hot Rod. The first time I saw Hot Rod, when he does his sort of footloose dance in the woods, and then he falls down a hill, and then he just keeps falling, and it's like it's like the Simpsons rake bit, but he's just falling for so long. And I was like 15 when I saw this, so I was the perfect age to just laugh at something really hard. But honestly, this movie has one of the hardest I've laughed in a film. And we're skipping ahead, but when Clint tells Booth on the phone, "You've got a rendezvous with my ass, motherfucker." It's just like something about it. It's such an insane thing to say.
It's pretty good. It is.
I'm gonna go off thinking about it right now. But yeah, and then the second part of the question was, what was the second part again?
Just most terrified you've been watching.
Oh, well, anytime I've watched a movie with Ian, I think most terrified. I think the first real scary movie that I watched was Saw. Probably like a year before I watched Hot Rod, and I had been like too scared to watch scary movies prior to that. So I'm like 14 or something, literally like clutching my best friends like a little lass. And I'm not right now thinking about it. Saw is going to come up in just a second. Saw's not that scary, but I think because I was new to scary movies, I gotta say Saw. Couldn't tell you what part of it even got me, but that one stands out. What about you, Ian?
Yeah, I'm a little bit more cultured than you are. So the last time that I can't remember the hardest I've ever laughed because of advanced brain decay that I'm undergoing. But I can recall that the last time I laughed very hard was watching What's Up, Doc for the first time by myself at about 1:30 in the morning. Just sitting on my bed alone. And I don't know if it was, just kind of late night giddiness, but it really got me. I was just me and enemy of the podcast, Ryan O'Neal, Barbra Streisand, just hanging out.
Do you have a bit that or a gag that stands out?
I know people love the bullet parody car chase, but no, I can't remember what it was that got me so much.
For me, the ending of the car, sort of the ending of the cap on all of the insanity in that movie is when they get into the courtroom and the judge's bench just collapses for no reason.
Scene really got me. Yes,
the collapsing judge bench.
Great. Yeah,
I think I saw it. I might have seen that movie at the New Beverly here. So I saw it somewhere with a crowd, and like there was basically applause when standing ovation for that gag.
Deserved.
And then Ian, you were saying that the most scared you've ever been in a movie is, let's see, what's something funny I can say right now. I guess like
every joke he's ever done on the podcast, Jonah, he does it like this. We just cut out the 5 minutes. Setup.
I guess I want to say like Good Will Hunting because you saw a hard math problem. Is that funny to say? Or no. You know what it was is Psycho, but it was because Because you saw someone taking a shower, and because you're so filthy, you don't wash. That's what it was.
This is one of the character assassination narrative that he's lining up for me, Jonah.
Yeah, Jonah, if you ever lost for something to say on a podcast, just go ahead and accuse somebody else on the show of not cleaning themselves. It'll go over.
Immediately put them on their back foot. You're the king of the podcast.
It's like a C+ joke, no matter what.
Yeah. The real answer is I saw The Shining at a sleepover party when I was about 14. Cut this out, but house. Now I think he's like a VC lawyer or something in Silicon Valley, but he used to throw great parties.
Ian is from the part of the San Francisco Bay where everyone he's ever known is now the scum of the earth. They're all now like actively destroying the world.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
So we were there. We had to sleep outside in tent. We had to. That was the point of the party. It was going to be fun. But we watched this movie. I was just crippled by fear. I remember I had to go back inside. I had to walk 10 feet to the house to go to the bathroom, and I sprinted the 10 feet. And then for about a year, I had to wake up early to take showers in the morning before choir practice, because I do shower, in fact. And when I did this, it would still be dark outside, and I would just sit there and just imagine Jack Nicholson's voice saying spooky things outside of the shower window, just like whipping myself up into a frenzy like a dog or something. It had a real long tail, that movie, for me.
Ian whips dogs. We're just learning this on the podcast. Jack Nicholson, by the way, was Eastwood's first choice for the Booth character. Supposedly, according to the screenwriter, who was talking about, that there's these stories of he was like, his house was half packed for him to move back to New Hampshire and give up on Hollywood when he sold this script. And so he says, last week I was on the phone with the guy from the credit card company, and now I'm listening to Clint Eastwood call Jack Nicholson at home.
Wow.
Anyway, Jonah, what about you? What are you, your hardest laugh and your biggest fright?
Yeah. So I didn't have any like specific moments in mind. I was like trying to think, and one moment was, I don't remember when, but I was like younger. It was with my brothers on the plane, and we were watching I Love You Man, I think on the little, like a PSP, but everyone around us was trying to sleep. Cool. And so,
was this on a, what is it? What were they called? UMDs? Is that the name of the PSP home video format?
I didn't even use it that much growing up. I just know we at some point downloaded a couple movies onto there. Like I had like A Serious Man on there, and I don't know. It's like a weird.
I make fun of you, Jonah, because I had A Serious Man on the first video iPod I had. So
I'm only laughing because of just thinking about watching that movie on. It's like every once in a while there's somebody on like YouTube who has one of those Shrek TVs, and they'll like put on Showa or whatever and take a picture of Showa playing on the Shrek TV.
Right. Yeah.
But was it I Love You Man? Was it the altitude? I feel like the altitude makes things funnier.
I think it was mainly because, so I think it was an overnight, like an international flight. We're probably visiting Taiwan or something, but everyone around us was trying to sleep. It was like dark. And so we weren't allowed to laugh.
The church laughter thing. That'll get you every time.
The whole thing. Yeah. So it makes it, so it just, I think, made it extra funny. And then in terms of like a specific moment from another film, I don't know, have you guys seen Stephen Chow's The Mermaid?
No,
I have
not yet.
No,
I've seen a number of Stephen Chow movies, but not that one because I'm afraid it'll be a letdown.
There is a hilarious scene where the guy goes to the cops and he's trying to describe the mermaid. You might have seen like memes of this, but and then they're like drawing what he says, but it's like absolutely absurd. Like they'd like I don't know, half man, half fish, and then they draw like. But like vertically cut, so it's like the side, and then like the man, it's like they just kept doing that, but they're clearly trolling him, and it was like really hilarious. And then most terrified I've been. One moment was I think I watched way back. You know that film, The Orphanage?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know that scene where they're playing that game, that sort of red light, green light style thing?
Oh, that scene is very scary.
I didn't actually get into horror movies until college, and I took a horror course with Jason Middleton. But so I was like not into horror movies yet at that point. So I had to like, my computer wasn't super large, maybe like 15 inches or something. But I like walked to the other side of the room and I like watched it from like, so it was like tiny in my field of view. But I was like, I could not. Yeah, I was like, so my parents came down. They probably just saw me just like on the opposite wall, like watching like on this.
That was also the most terrifying experience they've ever had watching a film was seeing their kid like 20 feet back from his computer still.
That's true. Middle of the night, glowing screen. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's probably scary. My picks. Yeah.
Oh, I do want to give a shout out also to friend of the podcast, the man behind Winkies from Mulholland Drive, who comes scooting out of the that's Bonnie
also
Aarons,
all-timer.
Who is also the nun from the film The Nun, and the Conjuring movies. The Nun 2 is coming to theaters in September, I believe. So look out, I guess. Look out for her. She's gonna be. The movie's not coming out. She's just gonna be there for like My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 or something. I'm just gonna turn around.
Sure.
Anyway, well, thank you so much, Jonah, for the 2-part question. This is the first on the show. You've really
broken the formula.
He's innovative. I appreciate that. So let's talk about the film. This is called In the Line of Fire. A great film. I'm wearing a hat, an In the Line of Fire hat. Did I say that on the microphone? Is that before we recorded?
That was before we recorded.
Okay, so I actually ordered 2 In the Line of Fire official promotional hats that are of the type of cap that if you Google like, I don't know, like police golf tournament 1990, it's like that kind of hat. And just to clarify, the other hat is not for Ian. It's for my lovely wife who has already fitted it to her head. So you snothed and you lost, Ian. But this is a film directed by Wolfgang Petersen, released on July 9th, 1993. This is, I assume, the closest weekend to the July 4th weekend. Big ass hit. This is, I think, adjusted for inflation, this is the second highest grossing film to star Clint Eastwood after Every Which Way But Loose, which just made so much money in 1978. But it's a big old hit. You can watch this movie, and we highly recommend that you do. In a number of places, of course, MGM Plus. We all love MGM Plus. Got our passwords memorized. Paramount Plus, close behind. Fubo TV. Jonah, you know Fubo TV, right?
Fubo? I don't think I've used it.
Oh yeah, you. No one has. It was originally. We've talked about it on the show before.
Ryan Reynolds joint.
Yeah, it was originally going to be the Netflix of soccer. Okay. I think it's short for football TV. And then they just decided let's put some movies on it. So it's like this, and I don't know, was like the Iger sanction on it or something like that. Something like that.
Yeah. Yep.
And then you can rent it or buy it in all the usual places. Now, Ian, you're down there in Oaxaca, Mexico. Where can people watch it if they're at your house?
That's right. If they're here with me, they'll be surprised to find that it's not on Amazon. Maybe the first movie we've had that's not on Amazon. I don't know what's going on. That's crazy. There. But it is on Claro Video, which is like a popular streaming site also for sports.
Spanish here. For clear video.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it is on, of course, Apple TV.
Now, Jonah, I should tell you, we have done this bit on the show where Ian is in Mexico and he says, that's not a bit, that's a real thing. But Ian's there and he'll say that something is available on Apple TV, and then I will say that it's called Manzana TV in Mexico because of how they speak Spanish. Mm-hmm. And then I decided to stop doing that bit, and I started going to a website where you can do text-to-speech AI generated audio. So I would have various notables say Manzana TV, like, you know, Charlton Heston or
Lisa Simpson,
and then Ian would kind of guess it. This is a sad day for us because someone seems to have served uberduck.ai with a cease and desist, and it is only their own proprietary voices that you can now use. No. So they went to all the trouble of scraping, you know, every episode of, I don't know, Bob's Burgers to get the voice of
Dan Lippert,
Jay Johnston from the January 6th insurrection.
Yep.
But all that stuff is no longer available. So I'm just going to have to say it in my own dulcet tones. It's called Manzana TV in Mexico.
And now we've prepared a 21 gun salute to, you say it's called uberduck.com.
Uberduck.ai. Okay, and cool. We do have that. Hold on, wait, where is it? Just give me a second. All right, it's going to take that's 2. I'm not going to do the whole thing.
Thank God.
That's, oh wait, I got a different gun. I forgot I had another gun. That's a 44 Magnum. That's the closest I can get to a 357. Anyway, In Line of Fire. You guys liked it?
did. Where do people know Wolfgang Petersen from? Give us some context.
That'd be West Germany. They probably know him from.
Yeah.
Now, this is a guy. Sure. He's a German guy. And his Wikipedia page mentions that he was born in 1941, the son of a naval officer. Now, which Navy, we can all guess. But look, it happened to a lot of people over there. He gets a start with West German films. He's got like an early collaboration with Jürgen Prochnow, I don't know. I don't speak German, but they do a couple of movies together, including one that sounds fairly interesting. It's about two gay actors in like 1974. It's just I don't know. It's probably good. I don't remember what it's called. And then he makes I hate to say it, he makes a big splash with his film Das Boot in 1981, which is nominated for a bunch of Oscars. There's like a million different versions of it. There's the TV cut. There's the director's cut, neither of which Jonah or I has seen, and Ian saw it a long time ago on his iPod Nano. So I don't even have a screen on that, but what are you doing? But it's supposed to be good. And then he comes over to the U.S. following Das Boot, makes The Never-Ending Story and Enemy Mine, which are two 80s sort of fantasy sci-fi things. Then he makes a movie called Shattered with Greta Scacchi and Tom Berenger and Bob Hoskins that has a very appealing poster. I've never seen it, although I've very nearly checked it out a number of times. And then
riveting.
He comes along to, what are you saying? What did you say?
I said riveting. You're telling a story about nearly watching a movie. Pretty cool.
Hey, riveting.
That would make for a pretty good question, actually. I feel like.
Yeah. Hey, have you ever thought about
nearly watched several times?
Yeah. I thought you were saying riveting because you were just remembering some of the stuff that happens in Das Boot.
Sure,
I assume there's riveting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't seen it. Did I mention that I haven't seen Das Boot? Let's go around. Let's each say, okay. And then this is, as I mentioned, a big old hit. And Wolfgang Petersen has a big 90s because he does Outbreak after this and then Air Force One, which is a huge hit. He also makes Troy, which is very successful despite no one remembering it very fondly.
No magic trick.
Yeah. So that's Wolfgang Petersen. But first, we've talked about your relationship to Clint, Jonah, but more broadly, how do you handle filmmakers who are maybe not the kind of guy that you would hang out with? You know, like, what do you think about, and we don't have to get into, get into Woody Allen territory or whatever, but even just like, you know, your Uwe Bolls, your Clint Eastwood, I certainly, we disagree with him on a number of points, or somebody like a Peter Berg, you know, especially I think in the action genre, you get a lot of guys obsessed with guns in the military. How do you navigate this?
Artist question kind of thing?
Yeah.
I mean, it is a complicated question. I think each person can like whatever they want because, you know, no movie is reduced to a particular political reading. Like, there's always more to a film, even just at the level of like texture or like the form of it, right? Like, you can enjoy a movie beyond, you know, the movies that exist. But I think, you know, we can't disregard, especially with commercial films made within a certain industry with its own like inequalities and injustices, and then like perpetuating a certain message. I think once you kind of move up from the scale of individual taste, I think you have to account for who is, you know, who remains in power when a film is successful, and then who continues to make these kinds of movies. So yeah, it's a complicated question. Like with Michael Bay too, you know, for example, right? Like you can't ignore the close, really, really overt and close connection to the military, for example, American military there. But you can, I think, I still love a couple of his films, and I think they're very fascinating from a stylistic standpoint. But yeah, that's sort of, there's more to be said, but kind of just off the cuff, that's what I would, I think, kind of going case by case and then sort of delineating the scope of our discussion, like kind of like what exactly we're talking about, I think would be helpful.
I think so. No, I mean, that was beautifully put. I didn't mean to lob no,
it's okay.
Live stick of dynamite into your hands.
That was excellent. And I think I'm reading between the lines correctly because Jonah has a real job. I think he's telling us if it's a bad guy who made the movie, just steal it. Now wink at me, Jonah. If that's what you're saying.
Look, Ian's got some some websites that end in .ru. Then if you need those links from him, just send us an email, podcastingforme@gmail.com. But yeah, I mean, it's just something I'm thinking about. We're recording this on the Sunday of Barbieheimer weekend. Barbenheimer. It was Barbieheimer for a while, and then I feel like whoever's in charge of this decided it was Barbenheimer, which that's heavily weighted toward Oppenheimer. No?
Well, I guess I understand both sides, because Barbieheimer, you're getting the whole of Barbie in there.
Buddy. It's a family show. Yeah. But anyway, just something I'm thinking about, because I saw Oppenheimer the other day and felt like, I found the film to be a bit irresponsible. This is not a Christopher Nolan podcast. We'll do that once we decide we want listeners. But anyway, so a little bit of production background. As I mentioned, this is written by, I don't think I mentioned his name, a guy named Jeff McGuire, who based his script on a concept brought to him by this producer named Jeff Apple. Everybody's name is Jeff. That was about a Secret Service agent. As far as I know, the idea was basically, what if a movie was about a Secret Service agent? Because Jeff McGuire is the one who brings in the JFK angle, like the whole movie.
Sure.
And it's one of those scripts that like bounces around and people are excited and attached, and then they drop off. So like Dustin Hoffman, Robert Redford, Sean Connery. At some point, Tom Cruise is maybe interested, and they're going to remove the part where he was even like, I mean, I think Tom Cruise was alive during the JFK assassination, but maybe like an infant. Like, I don't think he was ambulatory. So it keeps almost happening and then not happening. And eventually it's sold to Castle Rock, which is the production company headed by Rob Reiner, who, now this movie went into production and was done and ready to go by the time of the Oscars where Unforgiven wins. But at those Oscars, Clint does beat Rob Reiner for Best Director for A Few Good Men, which is just undeniably a less good film than Unforgiven. I don't think that's very controversial to say. Got a lot of yelling in it, though.
That's also undeniable.
Oh, and it has Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise, who we've already mentioned on the show. So we're doing great. So far, it's going really good, I think. He also, just incidentally, his first produced script, Jeff McGuire, was this movie called Victory, that's like a World War II POW camp soccer movie.
Whoa.
Directed by friend of the podcast, John Huston, who we mentioned on he's the subject of White Hunter Black Heart. Jonah, have you seen that one?
I did, but a couple years ago as well. But yes.
Great film. And that one stars Sylvester Stallone and Michael Caine, which is interesting to think about John Huston and Sylvester Stallone ever meeting, let alone working together. So it's written by this guy. And this is the rare Clint Eastwood movie that is not a Malpaso production. Malpaso is not involved, although Clint's main producer, David Valdez, is here, and Buddy Van Horn is the stunt coordinator. But yeah, this is a Castle Rock picture. Which is, I think, distributed by Columbia. So Warner Brothers and Malpaso not involved. Very rare. And also, most of Clint's guys are not here. We've got Ann V. Coates editing the movie. She's like the most legendary editor in the history of cinema, basically. Is shot by this guy John Bailey, who's perhaps best known for his work with Paul Schrader. He shot like American Gigolo and Cat People and Mishima. And this same year, he also shoots Groundhog Day, which I think is really interesting. Is that true with like a lot of the sort of the DTV action guys? Like, do you get the same thing that you get in more mainstream Hollywood, where like the same cinematographer will shoot something like In the Line of Fire and Groundhog Day, or are they more siloed? Do you know what I mean? Like, I think Bojan Bazelli, who was like Gore Verbinski's guy, so he shot The Ring and Pirates of the Caribbean. He also shot G-Force, the guinea pig super spy movie.
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about? Does this phenomenon happen in action cinema too? Or?
I mean, admittedly, I kind of, when I scroll through the filmographies of these people, I tend to single out the action stuff. So I'd have to go back and see, but I wouldn't be surprised if so.
Yeah,
it sounds like something that would happen. Just kind of.
I find it so interesting that like these people, they can, more than anyone else, cinematographers can like go all over the place, like do everything, and they don't seem to get like a particular reputation attached to them, except if they're Roger Deakins. But even Deakins, like, he's a cinematographer on
the Coen Brothers stuff, and I mean, he does all sorts of weird things.
In Time, the movie where Justin Timberlake and Amanda Seyfried are Time literally is money. That movie's, I mean, it looks good. I watched it recently. It's stupid, but it's not as stupid as you expect it to be, I guess.
Anyway, I think we could say this film, to me at least, we're all of a similar age, so I'd imagine it's the case for you guys. This film has the look of, I feel like, half of the movies I watched from ages 1 to 12.
This movie looks like the 90s to me. Like, yes, it looks like a 90s blockbuster to me.
Yep.
Which is interesting because this man didn't stop working in the 90s. I do just have to mention this. He shoots a million movies after this, but he's the cinematographer on both 2002's The Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood and 2005's The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
this feels like it should be illegal and
it's actually not. It's not misogynist of me to think those movies have anything to do with one another.
You're just thinking of the visual style when you say
and
that.
Also the word sisterhood. But yeah, briefly, the movie is about. Well, Ian, do you want to give us a little brief rundown?
You hinted at it, but the film is about a Secret Service agent, Secret Service vet, who has been around since the time of Kennedy's assassination. I think he says at some point in the film, he's the only active duty Secret Service agent who lost a president. So we're now in the early 90s, and over the course of the beginning of the film, they have reason to believe that there is a credible threat to the president's life now in the form of John Malkovich, who I think does a great job in here. And so it's basically the course of the film, he being an over-the-hill guy that people are basically trying to push out of the office, teamed up with kind of two partners, confusingly. We have the Dylan McDermott character, guy who maybe can't hack it in the high-stress, violent world of Secret Service ship. And then we also have Rene Russo as Agent Lily Rains, who is maybe representing the new wave of female agents, something that we've seen come up in many Clint Eastwood films so far.
Yes. Yeah.
So he has to figure out how to work with these two people separately in parallel and also convince everyone that John Malkovich's character, Booth, as he's called for most of the film, is a real threat. And, he embarrasses himself and maybe is too over the hill to be a real agent. And then at the end, of course, comes in to save the day.
So there's a lot of in this film that feels, as you said, Jonah, about the rookie, like feels like commenting on or noodling around the same ideas as the Dirty Harry films. You've got the agent who's butting heads with his superiors and he doesn't do everything by the book. You've got the new partner who represents the changing times as a sort of diversity hire who Clint at first doesn't trust and then comes to realize is valuable. You've got no one is listening to him until he has to save the day despite being taken off the case. And what's fascinating is that all of those aspects of the script were there before Clint Eastwood was involved. Like it just happened to resemble like a great Clint Eastwood role, which is maybe why he wanted to come on and do it. But it does. I think this is the start of like a really exciting run of Eastwood movies to me in the 90s through like Gran Torino, where I think he settles into this perfect combination of like the gruff, sort of ambivalent authority figure, tough guy, Dirty Harry character mixed with the deep regret of William Money. Like he's found this richer role to play, and I think this is when things really start to cook. For me, at least in the filmography. And like there's that monologue where he's talking about the day of the Kennedy assassination, which is maybe the best acting he's done
to this point
of a film we've seen thus far, including Unforgiven. This is the most emotive we've seen him.
I don't want to talk about Unforgiven, but I will say that the trembling of his lower lip in that sequence as he's looking out the window got me. I don't know if this is just because seeing old white men on the verge of tears is so affecting because of their extreme emotional repression. So that when an old white guy is going to cry, it's because he's just like racked with emotion.
A lot of old guys are emotionally repressed.
Sure,
not just the white guys.
Let's be inclusive. Yeah. Male, heteronormative and toxic masculinity have been around for a long time. Yeah. So you're right. This enforced repression of your emotions. But that really got me. I agree with you, Jake.
It's also it's an interesting case of Clint having to pretend that he's like out of shape. Because
except there's one scene where you can see his his tricep in this film, and I was thinking, damn, this guy is 62 years old. Do I look this good when I'm 62? I'm gonna quit podcasting and I'm gonna be that guy in the back of the magazines you get on airlines, where it's like the guy with glasses who's shirtless, and it says like he could beat a 30-year-old up or something.
This is where my head comes through the Speed Force, like in Batman v Superman, and I show you a picture of you at 62 looking great, so you quit podcasting now. For some reason, Jonah, I can't stop talking about The Flash on this show, despite not liking
in real life
the movie,
can't
not wanting to bring up Ezra Miller. It's just like it's a really effective image for me. I don't know. Apropos of nothing, did you see The Flash, Jonah?
I did. Yeah.
What are you
as a professional? Is that part of it? Or
so your question about art artists.
Yeah.
I like The Flash.
I don't think either of those terms apply to that movie, to be clear. But anyway, sorry, cheap shot.
No, I liked it. I know it's maybe the minority. I did.
Okay. I did. Are you a DC Comics guy?
Not particularly. I do tend to like. I just think those movies work better for me than a lot of the Marvel ones. But like, I'm a fan of Man of Steel and BVS, but I'm not particularly religious in terms of I don't really read comics either. I like legitimately thought it was enjoyable.
I mean, there were parts of it where I could see one of the 45 drafts that was combined to make that movie. Like there are versions of that movie that I could see might have been fun, but it does make Batman v Superman look like Hitchcock or something. Like it makes it really makes BVS look a lot better by comparison. Anyway, back to the film. So this character Frank Horrigan, who Clint is playing, is based in large part on a guy named Clint Hill, another Clint, who is, one might say, one of the main stars of the Zapruder film. He's the guy who climbs on the back of the convertible to kind of push Jackie Kennedy back into the back seat, and was famously racked with guilt about his inability to prevent the assassination. He, I think at one point mentioned, in a 1975 interview with Mike Wallace, Hill tearfully surmised that if he had reached the vehicle a second earlier, he would have been able to take a third shot to his own body, and felt a great deal of regret for not having been able to reach it in time. So this is a guy who, like, he's fully in, he's Secret Service brain. Yeah. And he regrets only getting shot twice for his country.
Insane.
Very strange. It's also, the movie comes out just a few months before the 30th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination, and the nation has Kennedy fever. Of course, we've got Oliver Stone's JFK in 1991. I do have to mention, so, given our politics and the fact that all these movies we're talking about came out quite a long time ago, we here on Pod Casty For Me also, I would say, take the listener back into the left. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So then also in 1992, there's a movie called Ruby where Danny Aiello plays Jack Ruby. That movie also features Tobin Bell, incidentally. But the JFK stuff is in the air. Like it's this.
It's in the air, and it was not my favorite part of this film. I will say that movie does not have terrible politics, and we can get into the finer points of it. But I think in general, it's critical of the CIA, critical of intelligence bureaucracy, and
also some Eastwood-style libertarian critique of government spending, I think.
Yeah, and Frank Horrigan makes fun of specifically the Iran-Contra scandal. I think at the same time, it's doing a thing that at least my parents and maybe even my grandparents are guilty of, which is just fully projecting onto the Kennedy era basically every fantasy that they would like to imagine was ever possible in the United States government. But so specifically onto him because I think he's close enough to the modern era that he can, still be in the conversation of how would he handle racial prejudice? How would he handle?
Well, it's also it was
international scandals, whatever.
A presidency interrupted, so you get to suggest. Yeah. I mean, the same thing is, it's not the same thing, but it's like watching Freaks and Geeks or whatever and being like this. Who knows how great this could have been?
First season canceled. Firefly lovers. Well,
let's not go crazy here, but Ian's always calling himself a brown coat. He's always mailing things to NBC or whatever. Fox? Was it Fox? Whatever.
I don't know.
But I also, in preparation for this film, didn't find time to watch Das Boot, but I did find time to watch Dave. Have either of you seen Dave?
No, I have not.
Ivan Reitman movie where Kevin Kline is like a president's body double, sort of Saddam Hussein style body double, who then has to fill in for the president. Yeah. Incidentally, because the president has a debilitating stroke while engaged in an affair with a young White House staffer played by Laura Linney.
This is like Reagan plus Clinton.
Yeah, exactly. And also Laura Linney is in Clint Eastwood's Clinton crime family movie Absolute Power coming up, which incidentally, Absolute Power is also a Castle Rock production. So
wow.
Lots going on here. But I did watch Dave, also by famous libertarian Ivan Reitman. And again, they both kind of present this. First of all, they both are obsessed with the notion of taking a bullet for the president. And like the climactic sort of Ving Rhames is like the main Secret Service guy in that, who they start to... I mean, he and Kevin Kline have chemistry. Ving Rhames has chemistry with everyone he's ever met. But It's a very charming movie, to be clear. But like the end of the movie, the sort of men telling each other they love each other line is when Ving Rhames says, "I would have taken a bullet for you," even though he wasn't the real president or whatever.
Sure.
But that movie also, like this one, in 1992, we get Francis Fukuyama's The End of History. And there's a sense of like...
one of the famous stupid theories of all of academic history.
One of the famous things you talk about when you talk about 90s movies on a podcast.
Yeah.
You get this notion of like the presidency as an institution that must be protected irrespective of anything the president does.
Right.
And like this movie, first of all, it's not really about this particular president. What's his name in the movie? I don't even remember.
Neither do I. Watched it 18 hours ago.
Maybe he doesn't have a name. They just call him Traveler. That's his code name. But we don't really get a sense of his politics at all. They do mention that California is an important swing state in this election, which I find interesting. I don't know. I forgot to look up when the last time California was a swing state. But yeah, the president doesn't matter. And it's about, the Secret Service is like the deep state. To think it when you think about it, like this is the part of the government that carries over.
Sure. Beyond the elected officials, you're saying. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that is in discussions of the CIA. I don't know if you guys have read any of those famous CIA like tell-all books. And I think they always
I've read all of them.
Okay,
I just finished the last one. I've read them all. Yeah.
That's why you're so smart. Mm-hmm. I've always thought that about you.
Oh, the hat doesn't fit.
But I think a big part of the discussion is how either if you're a fan of the CIA, then they have to nobly maintain their duty despite changing presidents. And if you are critical of the CIA, then they basically become these people with their own agenda, but also like yes men who try to offer solutions to presidents that will like make them look good, make the CIA look good, and also make the presidents look good.
Yeah. CIA, incidentally, was headed at one point by outgoing President George H.W. Bush, who... You might know him as the guy who shot John F. Kennedy. What if I'm just like one of those guys? But yeah, I mean, it's Jonah, I wonder how you sort of to expand on the art and artist question. Like so much of action cinema is obsessed with these kind of guys, with spies, with soldiers.
Yeah, this is like the perfect crossover of law enforcement and secret agents.
It
covers like 80% of action films.
It's first of all, I mean, it's just ludicrous that they're called the Secret Service, and it's like one of the most famous things that there is. But like, I don't know. What do you make of all of the fact that so many of? I mean, look, I do a Clint Eastwood podcast. Like, I love cop movies and war movies and spy movies, despite being very opposed to cops and wars and spies in my personal life. Like, does this bump for you? Is this something that do you ever like sort of take a look around and realize like, I don't know if I should be like that into the Universal Soldier and like what he's up to, Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure I can answer that now. It is something. Yeah. I mean, there is some kind of like, as you're watching, like I'm enjoying these spy movies. Like if I really thought about it, there'd be some dissonance, I think. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not consciously thinking about all this all the time. And like I said, action movies have more visceral, like an appeal beyond these questions.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking, I mean, a lot of action, and this doesn't really answer your question directly, but I mean, a lot of action movies, they do kind of, especially, I don't know, like in the 80s, for example, and into the present, but, they do kind of ideologically, they prop up like those in power in some ways because they want to, they draw the us versus them and then taking action against people.
Right.
I think it's horror in a different way is also about demonization and otherness. So I think action has a kind of traditionally cast more as reactionary because it is like we got to do something about it. Whereas horror has at least academically and historically, I think tends to be more viewed as transgressive because it's like things.
Yeah, there's like outsider art element to it.
Yeah, whereas like action cinema tends historically more commercial, more mainstream about restoring the order of the nation, the national body and the body of the hero. So
there's also something maybe about like just by the very nature of the genre, like horror benefits from a weak protagonist or like a powerless protagonist, whereas action movies, you want the protagonist to be able to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger at the beginning. By the way, Arnold Schwarzenegger has a very funny cameo in the movie Dave with his buddy Ivan Reitman. Ian, can you get that cat out of there?
I cannot, but it left on its own.
I'm trying to do a professional show. Which cat is this?
This is Mesquite.
Mesquite.
He's just doing a little tour of the room.
Jonah, do you have pets? Ian's got like 1,500 cats down there in Oaxaca. He's got 4.
And Jake has 1 less than that. So
I have 3 cats. But anyway, are you a cat man? Are you a pet man, Jonah?
So I don't own pets. I used to be terrified of dogs because my uncle had like 14 or 15. And
dogs?
Dogs. And I'd go over, I'd be absolutely like just horrified and like just couch bound and they're like, they're milling about.
Are they big dogs? At that point, he's probably got every size of dog.
They're not super big. They were kind of, I don't know how to describe medium size, but 15 of anything is kind of.
I'm not kidding. Was this like a sled team or some kind of work team of dogs? That's that many dogs. I feel like were they employed to do some kind of job together?
Not that I knew of, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I feel like you would know.
But I love dogs now. My in-laws have a dog and super super friendly and I enjoy them. But don't know any of myself. Oh wow, look at that.
There's a dog right there. A cat just walked by. Yeah. Would have been really funny if the listener could see that. But yeah, I mean, I feel like also just thinking about, I feel like the online, the discourse about action films now centers a lot on much smaller budget, lower promotion action films, the direct-to-video stuff, Scott Adkins and all of that. And also there's a lot of love for like Albert Pyun, for example, these movies that were sort of lower, viewed as lower class or like a trashier. And for some reason, at least for me, watching those movies as opposed to something very Tony like this, I don't even like take their politics into account because I don't know, I guess because I view them as having maybe fewer options in terms of like trying to present a particular message, or maybe just like they seem like scrappier, getting from cool fight scene to cool fight scene kind of obligatory plots, whereas something like this or something like the Oppenheimer, the aforementioned, like for me, I guess the higher budget and the higher prestige level, it makes me hold them to a higher standard of social responsibility or whatever. I mean, especially with something like Oppenheimer, obviously art doesn't have to be morally instructive, but it I think does when it's about the atomic bomb.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think it has to be instructive either, as we've said previously on the podcast, but I think presenting even the nuance or complexity of a situation goes a lot farther than apologia.
Yeah. This guy's good, this guy's bad. Whereas, so in the film, interestingly, there also is not much in the way of ideology from our villain, Booth, played by John Malkovich. Sort of I would say my white whale of an impression. Like if I could go to a crossroads and meet the devil and sell him my soul to do a John Malkovich impression, I would be, I'd consider it. I think John Bailey shot Crossroads, now that I mention it. Maybe that's why that came to mind. But so Malkovich, according to Wolfgang Petersen, William Petersen is a different guy. Clint had courted Malkovich to be in a number of Malpaso movies previously, and it never worked out. Malkovich is nominated for Best Supporting Actor for this movie, which is incredible. Very deserved. I think this is one of my favorite screen performances I've ever seen.
I will say that the beginning of the film on this rewatch, I was thinking, it's always nice to see like restrained Malkovich. And then at the end, okay, never mind. This is
don't worry about it.
Okay.
You're not,
I like this
he's
too.
not in this movie. Restrained Malkovich is not in this.
I mean, the whole thing is just like a Steppenwolf production. You're talking about a team of guys that hang out together. Are you going to talk about Steppenwolf?
We're not going to talk about any more of the DC EU. Ian. No more. Come on. He's one of those guys. But yeah, Malkovich, as you mentioned, he's a Chicago guy. He's a theater guy. He's great. I don't know. He's a classic weirdo. He's apparently he's a sort of post-ironic conservative to the point where no one really knows if he's doing a bit, kind of like James Ellroy. Apparently that's also the James Ellroy thing.
He reminds me, there's a Jim Jarmusch quote. I don't know why I'm talking so much about Jarmusch the last 3 weeks, but he talks about trying to make cinema that reflects the immigrant view of America, not in the sense of like talking about immigrants specifically, although I think there are many immigrants in Jarmusch films, but because he thinks there's like this authenticity in their view of the United States because they both have been exposed to ideology, like pro-American ideology through culture, but they maybe don't have the like learned association with, like growing up in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, I feel like Malkovich has this, but as an actor, he reads to me as a guy who's like from a different planet than the rest of us. But he's born and raised in the United States. His parents.
What's so fascinating about Malkovich is he's like a big guy, but he's got this like little voice that's sometimes bordering on. I mean, he plays Lenny in Of Mice and Men with Dustin Hoffman,
and he's with Sherilyn Fenn.
She's Curly's wife in that, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, we watched that in middle school or whatever. But he's this strange contradiction of big, masculine, and he seems almost effeminate, intellectual.
Like a Europeanness to him or something.
There is a very Europeanness to him, and his character is like basically a guy who's, well, first of all, Jonah, how do you feel about Malkovich? Do you like Malkovich?
Just generally, or
yes,
Malkovich
thoughts.
I think he's terrific here, and I like him in general. Yeah,
Con Air, a great film in my opinion. Terrific work. I didn't realize he was in Deepwater Horizon. Speaking of Peter Berg, and he's in at least one of the Transformers movies. Speaking of Bay, he's like a guy who
I don't think I made it that far.
I mean, they get Francis McDormand, they get Anthony Hopkins, like John Turturro's in a bunch of them. Stanley Tucci.
I think he's in there from the beginning.
I mean, you got to get, everybody got to get paid, and I think most of these people show up to wear a suit and say like, this is an existential threat, not only to the United States but to the entire world, and then they get like $1 million and go home.
Sure.
You saying you wouldn't do it? But yeah, his character is like just a spy who's been broken by his training and feels he's got a little bit of the Rambo thing.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't know that I would say he doesn't have an ideology. This is just dark Rambo. So I guess Rambo is also kind of
he's more
Rambo,
like
but
chaotic. Oh, is he lawful evil? I don't know. I never played Dungeons and Dragons, but he's like
he's one of those.
He hates the U.S. government for what it did to him.
But also he talks about, and again, this depends on how much you believe a character who's, maybe doing self-promotion. He talks about being turned into a killing machine and having been made to do horrible things for the CIA. Specifically, we get like photos of him in, I think the implication is Vietnam, right? So you would think of like Phoenix program stuff that we talked about on the podcast before. And then says that after that, he's just been discarded, or even he claims that one of his comrades was told to assassinate him in his home.
Right. Yeah. His friends.
Yes.
One of
exactly.
his friends. And I was reminded of the line in Full Metal Jacket where R. Lee Ermey it's in the boot camp section. He's drilling them on, like, I think they're all in the shooting range. And he says, where did Lee Harvey Oswald learn to shoot? And they all say the Marines all at once. Like, so there's a number of movies like this. That there's a Gene Hackman film called The Package. Have you seen The Package?
Don't think so.
It's what's his name? It's the guy, I think it's the Fugitive guy, Andrew something, the director of The Fugitive before The Fugitive. And Tommy Lee Jones is he's the mind-broken special operative guy who has now turned against the U.S. government. But it's like...
And this is how he tries to find common ground with Clint Eastwood's Frank Horrigan, right? Was by saying, look, we have both been trained by our government for different things, but...
Used and discarded.
And then he also says that as kind of this Kennedy-era valorization, he says that there's no cause worth fighting for anymore. So this is like a different time. And Frank Horrigan had said something similar to Rene Russo's character, where he says, that was a different time. I was a different person. There was like things worth fighting for back then.
Yeah. I mean, it does ring true. These are thoughts that I certainly had as like a young, starting to think about things politically person growing up under George W. Bush and then Obama, where the president, they feel the whole thing feels like a foregone conclusion. There's no sense that any regular person has anything to do with the presidency. The presidency doesn't seem to have any notable effect on anyone's lives outside of what's already happening. Like the awful shit that they've been doing, they continue to do, and it never really goes up or down in either way. And I feel like this is the point in U.S. history where that starts to happen. Am I wrong? Am I naive in thinking that there's something about like this once Russia is not...
I mean, you're talking about Fukuyama stuff here, right? This is exactly what you were alluding to, the sense that the order of the world has been determined and now we just have to live in it. There's no longer...
I'm talking about vibes. I'm talking about vibes the way that they are experienced in the U.S. Not necessarily that Fukuyama is correct, because I don't think he is. But I think people were thinking this way in the 90s and then acting based on that assumption.
Yeah, I think this is also a Chomsky idea as part of manufactured consent, is this idea of like empowering people to feel that they have enough democratic power, that they think that they live in the best society, but diminishing their power enough that they don't think it's possible to change any existing institutions at the same time.
Yeah. Here's a question for both of you. Would you take a bullet for the U.S. president?
No.
For me, it's a resounding no. Yeah. What about you, Jonah?
I mean, I'm leaning towards no.
Because
I don't even know the guy.
I don't know the guy. Generally, every U.S. president that I can think of, I'm not really a big fan. And like, while the argument in favor of saving the president's life is, I guess, just a kind of continuity of government, a means of preventing a sort of chaos, I would also feel a great deal of chaos, I think, if I were shot to death. Like, I don't think I would enjoy the results of that branch of the path either.
Well, by way of answering your question, I'll say that I wrote down, what do we think about the idea of assassinating a world leader? Is this a justifiable thing? So I guess I was just, I mean, let's not get into, legally.
Let's not, but
territory. But I think the argument of the film, which is semi-legitimate, is that unfortunately at this point, if you're in a country with an established order, then assassinating the president is the work of like deranged people or people who have maybe, like you're saying, Jake, non-ideological goals. Unfortunately, I don't know that we live in the type of country. If this were like revolutionary Algeria, I would say like maybe, it's worthwhile to kill whatever the colonial viceroy or something. But I don't know that, this seems like only kooks, right? Is that safe?
It's interesting and I neither of you are sociologists as far as I know, so feel free to not have anything you feel confident saying in response to this. But at a certain point, the politically motivated gun violence just turned toward completely unrelated people. Like, it's not like there aren't crazed gunmen in the United States, obviously, but for some reason they just stopped like trying to get significant people. It turned from assassination to murder.
You're saying we don't have Hinkleys anymore. We have like Walmart shooters.
Exactly. By the way, Jonah, if you had turned us down, we would have tried to get John Hinckley Jr. on this episode. We mentioned this previously. Also, Tetsuya Yamagami, the guy who killed Shinzo Abe. I don't know if he has Wi-Fi in his cell, but I don't know. We'll reach out. I did think about him when in the zip gun scene. Malkovich makes this what now just looks like a 3D printed gun. Like,
yes.
It is
much less crazy now that you can, what do they call them? Ghost guns?
Ghost guns. I like zip gun because it just sounds like, I don't know, it sounds like something from Halo or something. But Yeah, it's. I certainly wouldn't take a bullet for the president. There's a quotation I'd like to read from Clint. Is in some interview he's talking about he played golf with Gerald Ford while he was the president, and so he met Secret Service guys, and he said that it was hard for him to fully empathize with the character because specifically the Secret Service agents have a number of roles, not only to protect the president, but also to protect visiting foreign dignitaries. And so he was thinking, what if it's Fidel Castro? Would you jump in front of a bullet for Fidel Castro? I sure as hell would. I'd say now I also would not. I wouldn't do a whole lot. Mostly just
too late.
Protect some dirt. But this brings up an interesting, something that I learned from this movie, actually, from the opening of this film featuring Tobin Bell, the star of Saw, also star of another 1993 banger, The Firm.
Tom Cruise.
Tobin Bell's just having a great 1993. The Secret Service was founded it was the Secret Service of the United States Treasury, which is why it's called the Secret Service. It was founded implausibly, the organization was created by Abraham Lincoln like the day before he was shot to death, because apparently in 1865, something like a third of all U.S. currency was counterfeit. Like a third of all currency in circulation was counterfeit. And so their job originally was just to protect the money. And it seems maybe a little on the nose for barely researched left-leaning podcasts like ours to point out how interesting it is that they protect two things, and one's the president and the other is the money. But
have you ever looked at that stuff? You ever see which guys are on that stuff?
Yeah, for a big eyeball. Pyramid eyeball. You ever notice this? It was after the assassination of William McKinley that they start to protect the U.S., the members of the government, depending on who's president at the time. It's different levels of the extent to which they protect people changes. You've also got high-profile candidates for president and vice president are protected during campaigns. A lot of the scenes of the rally scenes in this movie are shot, or they're composited from actual Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush rallies, which is why they look a little funny. There's like a little digital weirdness going on in those scenes because they'll just insert the guy playing the president and Clint into what was actually like a campaign event for Bill Clinton.
Also notable when they put Clint Eastwood's face into stills of JFK's assassination.
Yeah, they sort of Zelig him into stills of JFK. And it's Clint from right before
The Man with No Name or something.
Fistful of Dollars. Yeah. Which it's interesting. I mean, they do that a little bit in The Rookie, where there's like photos of him from his old days as like a street racer or something. But it's always interesting when they do that. They do that. That's in The Limey. Terrence Stamp.
Yeah,
they use footage of him from like an old a movie from the 60s. In like a scene that's supposed to be him. Yeah.
I also like when they use an actual childhood photo of an actor to be the photo of an on-screen character. What
about when they use two childhood photos of actors who didn't know each other as children and they try to combine them? Those are always fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Terrence Stamp is the one who's in The Limey, right?
Yep.
Okay, good. It's him and Malcolm McDowell. I sometimes forget who's in what movie. There was some suggestion in the Patrick McGilligan biography of Clint Eastwood, the one that hates him, that he felt competition from Kevin Costner, especially after Dances with Wolves was such a big hit, and he's the director and star of a big prestige Western. And so after JFK, he wanted to get in on the JFK action, which I don't really buy because... Well, I don't buy it. It just doesn't seem like a viable competition.
Yeah, not to say that he's not a petty man, as we know, with the way things unfolded with Sandra Locke. But it does seem weird that he would be jealous of a man who's how much younger is Kevin Costner? 25 years younger than Clint Eastwood,
at least. By the way, Clint Hill, the Secret Service agent, is like 2 years younger than Clint Eastwood, so he's the right age to be. Yeah. This kind of guy. It's really funny to imagine Dustin Hoffman as a Secret Service agent because he's like, I guess he'd be assigned to the president's children. It's a short joke. There's also,
I think that was my first exposure to on-screen Secret Service agent, is like My Date with the President's Daughter or whatever. You have these Secret Service agents.
Who did the theme song for that movie?
Clint Eastwood.
The Presidents of the United States of America, the band.
Whoa, really?
That's funny. Yeah, it's a little cute.
That's
cute little joke. You ever see that, Jonah?
I haven't, no.
It's like the There was a whole sort of Armageddon Deep Impact thing with, not that's the Disney Channel one, but there was Chasing Liberty, and then what was the other one called? I'm going to have to look this up now. One of them had Katie Holmes. Chasing Liberty is 2004, starring
They should have called
Mandy
it like
Moore.
First Date or something. That would have been pretty good, huh?
That's actually, I think the other one was called First Daughter.
Okay.
It would be really funny if they came out like 10 years apart.
When we say something stupid like that, we just cut it out, Jonah. No.
Forgot who's. No, First Daughter is also 2004. Katie Holmes.
All right.
As daughter of the President of the United States. One of my first boss told me, so he went to Stanford at the same time Chelsea Clinton was there, and she was in his dorm, and apparently the dorms on either side were occupied by Secret Service agents, which is so funny to think about. The Secret Service guys putting up like the poster of the two ladies kissing in the bed or whatever, putting a scrunchie on the door. And oh no, wait, this is better. They'd put the little curly earpiece on the doorknob when they're not to be disturbed. But apparently they installed some kind of insane biometric lock on Chelsea Clinton's dorm door. But yeah, they protect the current president's family, and then for a while it was the former president's children up to age 16. So like theoretically, like Malia Obama is no longer protected by Secret Service or something. And then Obama signed some kind of order to extend protection for former presidents for life, because it was like 20 years or something prior to that, which seems self-serving, obviously. But also, who is going to pass laws about protecting the president, I guess?
If not the president, sure.
Yeah, it's part of his job. Have you ever encountered bodyguards? You ever have a bodyguard run in? No.
I encounter bodyguards fairly regularly. I do not know for whom, but my route that I take to walk to the gym walks me by bodyguards eating breakfast outside of some nondescript place. I don't know if this is like a Mexican government official or something.
Just like a rich person, maybe?
Yeah, could be like a Carlos Slim type. I don't know. But they just look like ex-cops.
Big guys,
yeah, exactly. Well,
Bouncers.
They don't look particularly imposing. They all got like guts, and they're just drinking coffee on the sidewalk.
Look like cops. Yeah.
Yep.
Jonah, no bodyguard run-ins?
No, nothing memorable. I may have maybe passed on the street, but I can't recall at the moment.
Oh, I guess Kevin Costner also a bodyguard in that one movie. I forget what it's called. Hey, come on. God, I'm trying to think. What comes to mind is not exactly the same thing, but my biggest interaction with guys telling me not to do something despite not being cops is when Ian and I went to the Psychiatry and Industry of Death Museum, which is the anti-psychiatry museum run by the Church of Scientology here in Los Angeles. John, I don't know if you're familiar with this museum. It's technically not run by Scientology. It's run by some like subsidiary corporation, so they can say it's like the Institute for Mental Knowledge or something like that, but it's just Scientology. But that's the place where I see, because I also work pretty close to Big Blue, the big Scientology building that's blue, and that's where I see guys with earpieces the most, is standing outside of the Scientology building. So favorite parts of the film? Oh, we should talk about Rene Russo really quick. Rene Russo plays the love interest. She does have, I think, great chemistry with Clint Eastwood, despite them being extraordinarily far apart in age. She mentioned in an interview in promotion for the film that this is kind of cruel, but also to a guy who deserves nothing but cruelty. She said, because her big breakout is Lethal Weapon 3, which is the year prior to this. And incidentally, where the first trailer for Unforgiven was attached was to the Lethal Weapon 3 prints. But she has a romance with Mel Gibson in that movie, and she says, I wasn't at all nervous with Mel. To tell you the truth, I have loved Clint Eastwood for years and years and years, and I had to go out and rent Lethal Weapon 1 and 2 before I did 3 just to see what they were about.
Hell yeah. Rene Russo also married to Dan Gilroy on this podcast. We're always talking about Andor.
And Dan Gilroy and Velvet Buzzsaw has John Malkovich.
That's true. It's true.
And Velvet Buzzsaw is also one of the worst films that I've sat through. I gotta say, not a successful work. I
love Nightcrawler. I've never seen Velvet Buzzsaw.
Velvet Buzzsaw made me so mad. Jonah, you like this Dan Gilroy guy? You seen Andor? I always get in trouble for not having seen Andor yet.
I've only seen Nightcrawler, not his other stuff. But
okay. Nightcrawler's good though.
Yeah, I liked it.
Not to tell you what to think about Nightcrawler, but Nightcrawler's good.
No, I agree.
Yeah. That's one of those movies that's shot, the day scenes are shot on film and the night scenes are shot on digital.
Whoa.
Just mixing it up, making the most of the medium. Shout out to Dan Gilroy. I gotta say, isn't it Tony Gilroy who did Andor? His
Tony
brother?
Gilroy is the mastermind, but they're like a family. I think one of them, I forget his name, unfortunately, is an editor. Dan Gilroy, usually a writer, sometimes director, and Tony Gilroy.
Then one of them runs the Garlic Festival, right? It's a little Bay Area humor for you. Mm-hmm. Jonah, you're in Pittsburgh at this time? Yep. Where are you from originally? I don't think I...
Well, I spent most of my life in Westchester County, and then I did my undergrad at Rochester, and then I moved here,
So different Chesters, just bouncing around between Chesters.
Yeah, and then to the Berg. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In Gilroy, California, which is notably on the freeway that you take between the freeways that go between San Francisco and LA, there's a town called Gilroy, which is where all of the US's garlic is grown. So the whole place smells like garlic. And they have a big garlic festival. And there's also a great Les Blanc film called Garlic is as Good as 10 Mothers. That's all about the Gilroy Garlic Festival. You can get garlic ice cream. Shout out. No vampires invited. Because of...
So we're talking about Rene Russo.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about Rene Russo.
Yeah.
I think she's great. I think she has great chemistry with Clint. I think they are... There's a line that my lovely girlfriend pointed out.
I mean, he's also moving into the phase of his career where he's not afraid to let younger women who he's attracted to on film just dunk on him really hard, which I think is good.
He's playing old for the first time in this, maybe in this movie, I think. Because in Unforgiven, which Ian has forbidden me from talking about, his character, he is old, but his character, he's like too old for the age of children that he has. Like Unforgiven is a whole other thing. But this one, Amanda, my girlfriend, pointed out, he's looking old here.
Yeah, I agree.
But he's so charming. And like when he says, why don't we go to the bar? They've got a hell of a piano player. And then it cuts to him playing piano at the bar. The guy's got it.
She turns him down, and then he plays like a little jaunty as time goes by. She's walking away. I just thought, I would turn back, my man.
And then there's that scene where they're falling into bed as they drop all of their earpieces and handcuffs and sidearms, which is like kind of very lightly, not transgressive, but at least progressive, where like
they're dropping the same things. You mean?
This is
same role.
Yeah, they're I don't know. I was gonna make a joke that's probably gross, so I won't. But anyway, Rene Russo, terrific. She's gonna be in Outbreak as well with Dustin Hoffman. Have you guys seen Outbreak?
I have not, actually.
Outbreak sort of manages it figures out how to be an action movie despite being just about diseases, because I guess they have to get like a helicopter full of antidote from here to over there or something.
Malto.
Outbreak's pretty fun. What the fuck was I gonna say? No idea.
I don't know, but there's a big part of the dynamic in the film is that, like we mentioned earlier, Rene Russo maybe represents this new generation of agents. And I will say that the first time I watched this film, I only thought the Clint Eastwood line was gross. This was maybe, 7 or 8 years ago. But now I have to wonder, it just rings with more nuance to me, where he is talking about female agents just being window dressing, which on the one hand, I think he is meant to come off as like a semi-joking, but maybe genuine old-time misogynist, that she is kind of like reforming by showing what a good agent she is. But his point is also potentially a good one. So I wanted to ask you guys what you think about, in general, as people who observe cinema, where I think this conversation happens a lot. What do we think about representation versus tokenism in terms of like trying to get certain types of people on screen or behind the camera or whatever, but maybe also just doing it in the film? Clint Eastwood says that this is just to make the president more popular with the feminist bloc or something, right? And I think the same thing gets said about Disney sometimes, where it's like, well, are they doing this out of a genuine interest in inclusion or changing Hollywood? Or are they doing this because they want to just rake in cash?
Jonah, do you have any thoughts on this? Tokenism and...
Yeah, I mean, besides tokenism is bad, but
yeah, I tend to agree.
yeah, I think it's sort of like the other question you're asking, art artists, where I mean, yeah, we want more people of color, and then like just non-hetero white cis male men, like right. So we want them at all levels of industry, on and off camera. So that's like, there's work being done to push for that. But there's also the case where even if it's tokenistic, maybe Disney represents a certain demographic in their films, and then there are people in the audience who feel genuinely inspired by that. Yeah. And then that ends up, I don't know, maybe inspires them to carry out their own political activism further down the line. So it's hard to measure the effects when it's at that systemic level. And so I think there's like work to be done in that first aspect with, in terms of obviously we want more the industry to provide more opportunities for more people, but is what we do get and what we have gotten, I think, has also had certain more complex effects on the audience, I feel like.
Yeah, I think I agree, John. In my capacity as a teacher, it's sort of undeniable that some of the same roles that people will point to as tokenistic, whether it's in like Star Wars or a Disney princess or something, it does make a difference for those kids, right? Whether they're like kids of color or queer or whatever, it's just exciting for them to see those people. And I think it also has a genuine effect on even non-minority kids who see those roles being filled by previously marginalized people, and maybe that normalizes it for them. So I agree with you that it's confusing because even if the Disney executive behind this decision was doing it for mercenary reasons,
right.
It also sometimes has a positive effect. And you're right. I guess it's hard to come down and without knowing the future basically and say, well, is this being done instead of substantive change, or is this being done as the first step of substantive change?
Yeah, Ian, I think it's interesting that, or it's you're right to bring up Disney, because it does feel like box checking often. Like they announced, there was Moana was a big hit, and then they announced Raya and the Last Dragon, saying this is going to be the first Southeast Asian Disney princess.
Or Coco, which I will say is
beloved.
I live in
Coco I was going to bring up. Like Coco also feels calculated in a sense, but at the same time, I think the Latino movie-going audience, like statistically, is that's the most consistent. They're the most consistent movie attenders of any ethnic group in the United States. Like it's just fucking smart to make movies that the people who go to the movies the most will want to see. Like, although it seems like at the same time, maybe, I mean, I hate to say this, maybe you don't have to do it because they're going already.
Sure,
but anyway,
you could make any type of movie, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, like Moana or whatever does feel calculated to somebody like me who, as I mentioned, has read every book that there is. But at the same time, I know a guy who's just a white dude whose daughter wanted to wear a Moana costume for Halloween, and he was trying to figure out if that was okay. Like, is this brown face? But his kid is just like, I like the girl from the movie and I want to be her because she's cool and has magic powers or whatever. And so there is a way that tokenism of this type, or representation that is entirely market derived, is useful to some people, as you said, Jonah, like inspiring. But at the same time, I think in especially places like law enforcement, or like, Biden appointed the first female head of the Secret Service, I think, which, like, great. It's a cop who's a woman doing, as we just spent our whole rookie episode talking about Latino police officers enforcing white supremacy. Like, just because there's someone in this position who is from a different background, it doesn't mean that they're tearing the whole thing down, Yeah,
I want to shout out, there's this Amy Davidson Sorkin New Yorker article, which asks, maybe inappropriate to even ask this question because I think the answer is so obvious, but it's titled, "Has the CIA done more harm than good?"
I remember that one.
Basically, I will say, to her credit, it's like a good review of recent CIA literature.
Yeah, it's a good list.
Yeah, and one of the books that she talks about is this book called Wise Gals, which is about underappreciated female members of the CIA. And Sorkin, the author of the article, is saying, like, look, you wrote this whole book basically trying to say, like, oh, these women contributed more than they're given credit for. And then the details of what they contributed was like, one of the agents spoke Spanish and she was mad that she wasn't put on the Bay of Pigs, team, basically. And sort of, or some of them were involved with an assassination in Guatemala or something of Arbenz. So it's like, at a certain point, I think tangential to In the Line of Fire, we have to be careful about what type of representation we're looking for if the structure itself is something we don't want. I think Hollywood, we're all movie sickos. We want to see more movies forever. So I think we do want to see a better version of Hollywood. I don't necessarily want to see more females in charge of the torture camps or something.
Right. Well, and no one's saying like, where is the Oscar for Leni Riefenstahl? You know,
right.
Like just because you're from a particular type of disadvantaged background doesn't automatically make you a revolutionary, although it should, and we should all be revolutionaries. And you know, it is interesting that they do publish the president's daily itinerary. I wanted to raise something that happens in the film. Well, two things. First of all, the sequence where Horrigan is chasing Booth across the rooftops and Dylan McDermott gets shot in the head.
Yep.
And Horrigan is dangling Vertigo style. He's hanging off the building. And I think, Ian, I sent you a video of this to tell you to watch the movie where Malkovich is reaching down and he does this little like very childlike clench and unclench with his hand, like give me the ice cream. It's such an incredible piece of acting. And I mean, the only thing I can say is that he should have won the Oscar because he was nominated.
Yeah, it was all I was thinking about during this rewatch, unfortunately.
Yeah, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? Yeah.
Yes, because I think this is like pre-parkour mania that takes over action cinema in the early 2000s, right? Where I think every single action film has a rooftop chase for a while.
Ian, parkour mania didn't just take over cinema. It took over Ian's life. Jonah, Ian had parkour shoes. He had special shoes for doing his little kicks
on pod. I was 15 years old, so really you're making fun of not me, but a child.
My cousin, who is a boy of the other side of the San Francisco Bay Area, he's a North Bay boy.
Mm-hmm.
He also was a little parkour guy and can do a standing backflip from a stop. So it's alive and well. Your legacy continues.
So glad to hear that. People continue to practice Kong vaults during lunch at high school.
Now what's this? Now you got to say what a Kong vault is.
That's like when you run at an object, like could be like a trash can or something, and you put your hands out in front of you. Like you jump and your hands are the things that so they can
like
swing
frog.
You for. Yeah, but like King Kong, like a cool guy.
Does he do that?
Frog. I don't know where the name comes from.
Parkour guys do not respect frogs. Is that what I'm learning?
Maybe not.
That's fucked.
Anyway, my point here is I thought the scene was well shot because I think up to this point, this type of action, I'm interested to hear Jonah's take on it, but there's a certain type of like, in the same way that hand-to-hand martial arts, I think up until like maybe the mid 1990s, you can just like show guys punching however you want, basically. And everybody says like, that's a good punch. That's cool. And then suddenly there's attention paid to what does it actually look like to, make things exciting or have good action geography that includes the audience in the scene and makes it legible and all this stuff. And I thought the sequence there does a good job of that up until and including Dylan McDermott getting killed.
Yeah, I mean, this is right. This is the moment when Hong Kong cinema is sort of crossing over too, and where you start to get the Hong Kong influence in. Stuff. Yeah, this is the same year as Iron Monkey, I think, just to name a movie off the top of my head. And like Tarantino is about to get the clout to start putting his name on these things to get them released in the US. But yeah, I don't know. Jonah, where does this sit for you in terms of action of the period?
I don't know if I'll make a broader statement, but I do think I agree with Ian. I think it works in this film. And I think, I forgot who it was mentioned, this movie does look a lot like other 90s movies, but I think here, especially in this scene, like watching it, like the sky being like and actually it recalls his speech that you all mentioned. We talked about it being a clear day when JFK gets shot, and this is when his partner dies too. So there's like this extra poignancy to it, I think. Yeah, I thought in some ways it being, I don't know, I just something about the camera setups being so clean. It does like jerk a little, I think, when it's like on the ground and they like hop onto the roof and then like run by it. I think it like jerks slightly, but I just found the clean static framing, relatively static framing works really well here. because it like underlay, I know, and then with the sky being this like constant blue on the top of the frame, and then at the end when like Will McDermott's character like flops over like the ledge with his like bullet, it feels like it felt very perverse in some ways, like the violence.
It's nasty. You're right.
Yeah, it felt too like, I think it being so stately and clean, and then this little like his body just flopping out like jump scare style, like in close up. I think it made that moment really effective for me. So actually, I like the film, even though in some ways it looks like other 90s action films. I think I thought it worked really well here. The kind of almost stately, clean coverage, I guess, of the action. Yeah.
We should point out Academy Award nominee John Malkovich improvised putting Horrigan's gun in his mouth in
I think you told me this the first
against,
time that I watched. It's
against masculinity, I guess. Wonderful.
It's very effective. Yeah, I liked it a lot.
He seems to be enjoying himself as he does it. Like you can tell he's like he's making a meal of that thing. And Ian and I are right behind him in making a meal of a handgun soon enough. Anyway, I think the Westin Bonaventure Hotel, which is the big weird looking multi-cylinder structure downtown in Los Angeles where the final sequence takes place. This elevator sequence is so, just like the geometry of it is so brilliant to me, where they're high up. It's all about getting a clean shot, and like he's on the phone with, or he's got Rene Russo in his earpiece, but he's having the conversation with Booth and like trying to reply to Booth in ways that are also giving instructions to Russo on the ground. There's all this glass and steel. It's like, you know, it's extraordinarily like postmodern architecture, I guess, right? Is it modernist or post? I'm not an architecture guy.
Ooh,
Ian, you're the architecture guy on the.
I'm certainly not, but I did research a little about the Westin Bonaventure, and there's a enormous block quote on the Wikipedia page that I would be happy to read.
Please.
About somebody choosing this as a representation for postmodern geographies. Edward Soja. So in this
Soldiers of Jaws Army, is that right? What that stands for?
Another thing that I was big into in high school. So I think also Frederick Jameson talks about this hotel. But I'll read the quote. This is almost beyond my capacity to read into a building, but I don't necessarily disagree. So Edward says, a concentrated representation of the restructured spatiality of the late capitalist city, fragmented and fragmenting, homogeneous and homogenizing, divertingly packaged yet curiously incomprehensible, seemingly open and presenting itself to view, but constantly pressing to enclose, to compartmentalize, to circumscribe, to incarcerate. At the very end, he says, once inside, however, it becomes daunting to get out again without bureaucratic assistance. In so many ways, its architecture recapitulates and reflects the sprawling manufactured space of Los Angeles. So, Jake, you're right on the money. This is a postmodern building.
I'm just like that eyeball. Right on the money.
That's right. Yeah.
There's a moment where Mitch Leary, that's the real name of Malkovich's character, his landlady, when they first become aware of him, his landlady, who is I think supposed to be a Russian immigrant, certainly an Eastern Bloc immigrant, mentions that one of the great things about America is that it's the only country where the president's house is like open to the public, which immediately I knew it wasn't true. I just had to confirm it. But like, you can go to Buckingham Palace. You can.
It's not true. It's
you
true.
can go
in Mexico,
to the,
you can go to the Chapultepec Palace. Yeah.
But also the parts of the. So then this led me down a whole trail of looking at official residences. And Jonah, you used the word stately before to describe the action of the film, but having now watched this and Dave back to back, and having spent a great deal of my life in Northern Virginia in the DC area, to the point where like all the kids know, depending on how many helicopters are following Marine One, who's actually in it. Because like if it's the president, there's 3 escorts. If it's the vice president, there's 2. If it's anybody else, it's 1 or something like that. U.S. Like federal government interior design is so fucking awful. I hate it. I hate this kind of like federal style, this Georgian style. These interiors are so disgusting to me. And the movie is literally like red, white, and blue all over the place. There's a lot of the sky is extraordinarily blue. There's a lot of red in it. There's a lot of white in it, not just because of, everyone's got a flag lapel pin, but like suffused through every frame. But I learned other countries that are not quite so self-obsessed as the United States, and we're talking about like the federal governments of these countries, the most self-obsessed organizations like in the world, still are able to say, you know what, we should like build a new residence for the president that looks better.
Sure. Yeah.
So like if you look up where the prime minister of Japan lives, it's like a cool, more modern looking building. Like Brasilia is obviously really cool because the whole thing was like master architected, but like the Brazilian president's official residence looks cool. It looks like a cool building and not like a bizarre piece of kitsch,
This is also like a classic move of both genuine, I would say, like populist leftist leaders and also maybe faux populists. But I love the move of like you just move into decent but cool apartment or something and just sell the White House, Great. Why? We don't need a big fancy building. Drive like
when you become the revolutionary leader of the
right. Like a Thomas Sankara or something. I think that's cool.
Yeah, Justin Trudeau apparently broke with tradition and lives in a different official residence of Canada, but there are a bunch of them. They're kind of like you get your pick, which is interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, that's weird.
And also there's a photo of him in the first one, or in the previous, the one he broke from. There's a photo of him as a baby, as an infant being held by Pat Nixon, just in case you need a reminder of him. His just despicable presence. There's a mention in this movie about the way that Secret Service guys carry over across administrations. We talked about this kind of deep state thing before. There was that movie, Lee Daniels' The Butler, a few years ago that was also interested in this kind of idea. And I don't know, I feel like you should be able to quit the Secret Service if you don't like the guy, Like it seems so disingenuous to just want to protect the person, like this person because of their job, especially, or like their
like
wife or whatever.
West Wingism, right? Yeah. To say like, I believe in the sanctity of the position or just like the idea of civil service, regardless of who I am civil serving.
Interesting to note also that we are dealing with, like, the star of this film is a former elected public official. Obviously, the mayor of Carmel has a much different type of security detail than the president of the United States. But I think Clint, as a mayor of Carmel, just carried over his personal security from being a big movie star. I think that he had more bodyguards than the mayor got. There was also mention in the McGilligan book that he was romantically linked by some gossip rags to his predecessor or his successor as mayor of Carmel. It was like an eligible young woman.
Extremely Eastwood on brand move.
It's so cool.
Yeah,
date the next mayor.
Very easy to believe.
Let's see. Any other?
Well, speaking of elected officials, just to talk very briefly, Fred Thompson, we've talked about on this pod before.
Staple of 90s political cinema, and then candidate for president.
Yeah, future candidate for president. I think he's already been a senator at this point. I did a little background reading on him. I guess I was prepared for the worst because he was a Republican primary candidate in the 2008 election, but he was on some part of the Nixon Watergate Investigation Commission, and he was maybe responsible for writing the line about we need to know what Nixon knew and when he knew it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he was on.
So that all comes up in Dave, that line in particular, because Dave has a whole corruption angle. Not to talk about Dave a bunch. He's laughing at me.
I'm just the mythos in my head of it is so much greater than it could possibly be.
What's interesting and upsetting about Dave is how many elected, like sitting senators. Obviously, it's got Larry King and Jay Leno and the McLaughlin Group and all those guys saying, "Have you noticed a change in the president's demeanor?"
Yeah, it's like when you get Wolf Blitzer now. Easy,
but there's like they got sitting senators to give a little blurb about how they feel about the fake president's jobs program or whatever. And it's just so disgusting to me that you view your position as an elected official as so ultimately like inconsequential and so based on maintenance of the status quo rather than doing any actual work that you like are willing to be in a fake movie about a fake president to me.
Well, I think, or you're just so invested in the artifice of it, the PR, right? That you just know that it's more show than action potentially.
Yeah. And that's referred to in the film, the beast or whatever, the extraordinarily armored Cadillac limousine that the president travels in doesn't need guys riding alongside of it or running alongside of it, but it's all about projecting
presidentiality.
Yeah, exactly. And interesting that he's got the visiting French. Is it a president? What do they got over there?
Ambassador. Yeah, was that a reference to real life? Why was this so important?
There's a brand of camembert that you can get at the grocery store that says Président. And I always wonder, is this like official steak cheese?
This camembert.
You ever had this? You ever had this camembert? This Président? No. Are you in your PhD studies? Have you selected a foreign language? Do you speak a foreign language?
No, we didn't have to. Well, we had to like take. It's like a formality almost. But I had to take like a couple classes of like introductory French just to like check off that box. But it didn't actually end up factoring much into my research. Like I speak some conversational Chinese just from growing up, but that's like separate from my
right. I just wondered if you take French so you can read Cahiers du Cinema in the original French or something.
I wish I were that.
You take Russian so you can read Eisenstein, something like that. Yeah.
I wish.
But that just made me think of Day of the Jackal and how, one could conceivably hide a improvised firearm inside of a cane or a crutch or something.
Yeah, I was also thinking about Day of the Jackal because it's one of the all-time greats in terms of like Rafifi or something where they just show the procedure of a lot of what's happening more than being invested. And I think that's wonderful. I enjoyed a lot in this film when they're like taping the manholes with Secret Service tape to show that they've investigated.
Me too. Or talking about, like they have to sort of call an audible and there's too many people out front. So they have to go, they bring the president in at a different door.
Yeah, there's like pints of his blood in the hospital. It comes up.
Oh, I really like that. How they have to prepare the pints of blood, which like I know those go bad, I guess, but why don't you just bring them? You
mean like on site blood?
You got this plain. Well, yeah. Why don't you just bring the blood yourself? Like you're the federal government. You can't get some blood and have it near you. Also, the Wolfgang Petersen is going to recreate the interior of Air Force One memorably in.
For which film?
Plane. But the chairs that they sit in, the chairs that the Secret Service sits in, like especially the scene where Clint has a cold or whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
These look like the most exquisite chairs. I could not believe these airplane seats.
I wasn't paying attention to the chairs, but I did enjoy as just the film in general. This Jeff McGuire guy, I don't know what else he's done, but I enjoyed a lot of the touches of like Rene Russo demanding that he blow his nose was extremely sweet to me. This is just nice.
Yeah. I mean, that's very familiar to me. Jonah, we've talked about this podcast slowly transitioning into an allergy focused podcast.
Because I've got them. Bad allergies.
It comes up a lot. Clint has allergies to cats, but yeah, I've many a time had a woman who's nearly my height tell me that I need to blow my nose. Also wanted to do a quick shout out. We've been talking about, the film as cultural product, but also as commercial product. Clyde Kusatsu is an actor who plays Secret Service agent Jack Okura. He's basically just a guy in the background. But in 2012, when SAG and AFTRA formed like Voltron into SAG-AFTRA, he was the first elected president of the new SAG-AFTRA local in Los Angeles. The Los Angeles local of SAG-AFTRA, probably a prominent local within that union. And also, so he was then elected the first national vice president, Los Angeles, which is a strange type of position. But he was reelected to that office 4 times. So shout out to union leader Clyde Kusatsu, who appears in this film briefly. Also, just a weird little teaching moment where they explain how ukulele is spelled.
That's true.
Something I noticed. Oh man, when he kills the bank teller and her girlfriend or roommate, so brutal. Like just something about that is deeply upsetting.
Yeah.
I think is that pre Dylan McDermott dying? I think it is, right? And that feels like a shift in the film, but what type of movie we're watching.
Oh, Dylan McDermott and Dermot Mulroney did like a little support the strike video. The studio's just fucked up messing with these people who are memes, can just like instantly create memes. Yeah, what are they thinking?
Most charismatic people on the planet, which is why they have this job. Yeah.
Jonah, I said this on our rookie episode, but I am offering my services as CEO of the Walt Disney Company for $2 million a year. It's like a 1/14th what Iger's taking.
Yep.
And I'll do more than 1/14th the job he's doing. That's a commitment. At least 1/7 the job. Is there a studio you would want to run, Jonah, while we're talking? Ian, you can think about this too. It's a lot of responsibility.
Sounds like it'd be, sounds like it would be a lot of responsibility, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I would take for all the first class tickets and stuff. Like you got to put me up in the same places you're putting Iger up, but I don't need the yacht. I'll just take $2 million, I looked it up today. I did some math. This is based on something I saw on Twitter. Did some math, and $1 million would pay my rent for like 27 years. Pretty upsetting to think about. Just $1 million. Ian, what studio are you running?
I guess I'm
Angel Productions. Is that the Sound of Freedom one?
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Something like that.
Yeah, you're saying I would run one of the ones for bad guys.
Yeah, Ian's whatever the thing is, Ian does the bad thing.
Yeah, Dinesh D'Souza will be my right hand man. No, I would probably bravely take like $50,000, and then I would get a bunch of more talented people who have run studios before who could do the job, and I would give them the rest of the money. So I would just take a free $50,000 and not do any of the job. How's that sound?
It sounds okay. I guess what you're suggesting is that you would prefer to do what you're currently doing instead of being the guy who gets to say, yes, I think Pete Davidson should be the voice of this Transformer in Rise of the Beasts.
King of Staten Island too. Yeah.
God, they keep giving that guy stuff. Is anybody watching that? What's it called? Bupkis?
Boy, do I not know what you're talking about. Yeah, me and Jonah.
We need them to release the streaming numbers. I live in Los Angeles, so I see the billboards. I know about every streaming show, even though I've never seen any of them and no one has. There's a show on where Pete Davidson, yet another loosely autobiographical Pete Davidson project. The guy has had the most interesting life of anyone in the world. It's Pete Davidson, Edie Falco, and Joe Pesci. Joe Pesci is working on television. Speaking of Lethal Weapon,
might have fallen.
Playing Pete Davidson's grandpa. I don't know. And the key art for it is Pete Davidson floating, presumably in the Hudson River, like swimming, with a floating ashtray next to him and his characteristic cigarette that he smokes because he has Crohn's. I don't know. Bupkis. Anyway, that's what I'm currently being paid by the Walt Disney Company. Bupkis. Do we have any final thoughts on the film In the Line of Fire? We're coming to the end here. I like the scene where I like the digital. Speaking of what I presume is happening in the clip from The Mermaid, that I'll need to watch The Mermaid tonight. But the like digital composite artist.
Oh yeah.
Where they're stretching. They're doing like proto Snapchat filters on.
Yeah.
What's
and then
nuts, John Malkovich?
Recreate that sequence later as John Malkovich puts on his disguise, and I also enjoyed it.
His disguises are really good.
Similar things, and I say, "Oh yeah, hell yeah!"
Oh wait, I have to show you guys something that I found when I was doing research for. The Rookie because I was trying to find out like whether there were Nazis in Brazil because of the Raul Julia and Sonia Braga play Germans in that movie. I don't think I can upload images. I'm just going to send you guys both the link to a Wikipedia photo. This is the U.S. Secret Service imagined a disguise that Hitler might have used to evade capture. So if you guys want to click the thing that I just sent you.
Well, this is just a Wikipedia page for
scroll down. Why didn't it work? You'll see it. Okay, here it is. Here's the actual link. I mean, like, yeah, obviously that's what it would look like, but like.
Actually, this is a pretty good disguise. I was thinking in the film when John Malkovich dresses up at the end, puts on his special CIA disguise, that if I saw that guy in the street, I would say, damn, that guy looks so much like John Malkovich. That would be my first thought.
Exactly.
This is a good disguise. Hitler without mustache. 00002.jpg.
They're really. I guess they were imagining that they'd have to make a lot of these Hitler without mustache images. They're just starting. Yeah.
This is strong. I would fall for this for sure.
Yeah, a little bit of, but I just think it's fun. This is what the Secret Service is working on. This is your tax dollars at work. There's a bit of commentary of our persuasion in the film when Fred Thompson, I think, is the one who balks at the idea of frisking people entering a $10,000 a plate dinner, which they can't do crime.
Yeah,
they're financial criminals.
Yep. Only wage theft.
I try to convince my friend to start posting on Nextdoor about wage theft. Be a good bit, I guess, but probably tiresome. I saw a strange man in a hoodie doing wage theft down the street. Has anybody seen this before?
Yeah. There's a new guy in our neighborhood. He's been wandering around, and it's like a real estate agent.
Papa John Schnotter. Yeah.
My only other last thought. Did we have this conversation on pod? I wanted to leave it to the end so you can cut it if this was a conversation that we just had like 2 weeks ago and I've forgotten. Discussing the fact that John Wilkes Booth is a famous also assassin for those just joining us.
Had panache.
He had panache, exactly.
There's this weird A sound that Clint Eastwood says when he says the word ass, and he says ass a lot. He's like,
it has like an E in it, a short E in there somehow.
Yeah, you got a rendezvous with my ass, motherfucker, like that kind of thing.
Yes. So John Wilkes Booth of the Booth theatrical family, and one of the most famous working actors at the time.
Yeah, he was like the Danny Houston of his day.
Yes. Did we have this conversation during White Hunter Black Art?
I don't think so. What were you going to say about it?
Yeah, that's this is just thinking about. Yes, this is the equivalent of like an Estevez, shooting the president or something. It would be.
Sorry, I just did to you what one of the most painful things that can possibly happen in conversation, which is like, oh, the interesting thing you were going to say. You already said it. Yeah, no, it was cool. I did know that was the point that you were getting to.
Hey, you know what? At the very least, you responded to something I said, so that goes a long way. That shows me that you were listening.
Better than you do often.
Yeah.
Jonah, don't start texting this guy. He's like maybe the world's shittiest texter. Any last thoughts on your end, Jonah, before we wrap things up?
Not much. I mean, I think I hadn't really researched the background for this film, actually. So I thought it's so interesting that you were saying a lot of these like script elements are already present in the film, because this felt like an extremely Eastwood film. Like almost like I'd have to rewatch his 90s stuff, but it almost feels more Eastwood than some of his stuff. It like telegraphs her in like, as I think Jake was saying, he's entering this phase of his career, and it so baldly presents so many almost like Eastwoodisms. Like he's playing jazz piano, they reference his glare, and then he's like trying to situate.
There's even there's that thing about Dylan McDermott asks him, how did you know he didn't have any bullets left in his gun at the beginning? There's like a whole, Dirty Harry. Yeah.
It's just wild to me that a lot of this, I mean, no wonder he was drawn to this, like you said. So it makes it just fascinating that it shaped up that way.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite Secret Service or like bodyguard action film? Just while we've got you here to ask you for live recommendations.
So this is like totally a different kind of bodyguard, but this is a show that just hit Netflix called Bloodhounds. Have you guys heard of it?
No, I don't know this.
Yeah, so it's these two rookie boxers. It's a South Korean 8-episode series, and they basically there's this like company who's like basically they're like thugs, and then they like steal money from loan sharks, and then they cause those loan sharks to have to crack down harder on the people. And then so it causes it, and basically they're very crooked basically, and then these two guys, underdogs, they work as bodyguards for this honest loan shark and his granddaughter, and then they try to like protect her as they try to take down this corporation. Anyway, it has some very the kind of South Korean melodrama that I think is done really well here. But there's really exciting boxing sequences, like fighting sequences where they're putting their training to use against like 30 guys.
I love this shit.
Ooh, I love that.
Very good action. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. I have one last question for the action movie expert, self-proclaimed. He didn't say that.
Who's saying
Den of Thieves? Den of Thieves unrated cut on Blu-ray is available on Amazon right now for $8.83. Should I get it? Should I get Den of Thieves?
So I'll be honest, I haven't seen it in a few years, and I didn't watch it in the best context. I watched it on an airplane.
But you said before that was the funniest movie you've ever seen. Now this has just become like a hostile witness interview with you.
Yeah. So you're saying that you would give it a monetary valuation of somewhat less than $8. This is like $6.40 to you.
I could get it new pre-owned for $7.20. What do you guys think? Listeners, send us an email. podcastingforme@gmail.com. Should Jake get Den of Thieves? It's a Blu-ray and DVD and digital code combo. So all your bases are covered.
By the way, you guys, thanks again for inviting me, because it actually inspired me to go buy the 4K for In the Line of Fire.
And, I got it too. It's
I don't know if you've ever watched it on an OLED before. It looks really, really good.
I have not seen it on an OLED. I got to check that out. This is one of those. So this is a sad thing for me, because In Line of Fire 4K, I think, Top Gun Maverick 4K, they've started to, they're not including the Blu-ray disc automatically in the 4Ks anymore.
Right.
They were doing that pretty standard for a while, and I've got a shitty 4K player that skips a lot. I got a Sony, and it you basically can't you get about an hour into a movie and then it skips, and you just got to do something else.
Yeah.
So I would just watch the 4K until it gave out and then switch to the Blu-ray. That was my
okay.
But they're not doing that anymore. So what kind of player you got? We can cut this out if you want. But do you got a Panasonic? What are you playing your 4Ks on?
Oh shoot! I'd have to go check. But I think it might have been Sony actually, but I do. Yeah, I don't quite. Mine doesn't skip. Then again, it might be newer than yours. I got mine like a year ago or so.
Okay, yeah, mine's a couple of years old. I've just read everything I've read online trying to figure out why my discs are skipping. They just say that there's an issue with this model. It's a Sony. You know how
I see.
This is
internet
Reddit
consumer reports guys like to. Well, yeah, it's Reddit, but we just talked about this.
I know this is a great
Reddit
place to use.
Unfortunately, Reddit is the only place where you can get trustworthy reviews of consumer products. The show is rapidly becoming talk radio. We're just saying the same thing over and over and over. We got to get a lady in here who just agrees with everything we say. Then we'll officially be talk radio, and then we can do some of there's you see this you see what happened last night with you hear about this what's that famous person? Oh shit. You hear about this Zendaya? Now it's morning zoo. We'll get better at it. We'll do a little bit of practice.
70 to 80% of the way there, so this is not the longest walk.
There you go. That's my other noise. Well, anyway, that's our episode on In the Line of Fire. I got some Blu-ray recommendations there at the end. Den of Thieves I quite enjoyed it when I watched it before. I just don't know if I need to own it. I'll have to give it some thought. I think they're working on a sequel with Ice Cube Jr.'s character. What's his name? Doesn't matter. Thank you to Jonah Jeng for joining us today. If folks want to read your excellent work, I mentioned it up top, but where can people find out more of what you're working on? Where should people look for you online?
I write for a number of places, but especially Notebook and Movie. I write on action movies there, and it's where I contribute most regularly. So, yeah.
Terrific. Also, jonahjeng.com, very useful place to find links to all kinds of Jonah's work that I've personally used. Fully functioning website. Wonderful site over there. Speaking of wonderful websites, podcastingforme.com. Got everything you could ever possibly need. Also, let me check. Is Twitter X yet? That's happening today as we're recording this.
I'm too far away now. I can't tell which of this stuff is real. Is this real? Is it really going to become X?
I don't know. The bird is still there. It's still twitter.com. Guy's a moron. Doesn't know how to do anything. But thank you for listening to our episode. Remember to subscribe, rate us, write a review. It helps us on the algorithm. If you like the show, tell a friend, tell your dad. Go ahead and call the White House and tell them Podcasting For Me has been giving me a lot of ideas. Look, there's no such thing as bad publicity. Yeah, exactly. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Podcasting For Me if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or you're interested in co-hosting a two-person Clint Eastwood podcast. You can email us at podcastingforme@gmail.com. Thank you to Jeremy Allison for our artwork. Oh, I got a Jeremy, a bit of gossip.
Insight.
Jeremy is a friend of mine who did the artwork for our show. He lives in Santa Monica, California. He texted me this earlier today. I'm pretty sure I just saw Guillermo del Toro driving down the street with John Carpenter.
Whoa.
So they might be hanging out. I'm sure they've hung out before. I mean, it's not like...
Let your imaginations run wild.
Yeah. I'm sure it's purely physical. There's emotions aren't getting involved. So that's going on. And thanks, Ian, for being on the show. Can't get rid of the guy.
Thank you, Jake, for
black mold.
Yep, for trying to use bleach, white vinegar. What else have you mixed with water and thrown on me?
Next, I'm gonna use those two and then add some fertilizer into the mix and see what happens.
Okay.
Speaking of guys fighting the federal government.
Yep.
Gonna come up soon. Our guest next week, Timothy McVeigh, still trying to nail down a time. What are we doing next week? What's the next episode? Oh, of course it is A Perfect World, a film that is supposed to be terrific. I have not seen it yet, but Clint, can't beat him, join him. It's Clint directing Kevin Costner, the guy from Before. And if you want to watch A Perfect World ahead of that episode, all you got to do is wait for letterboxd.com to load. And if you want to watch that ahead of next week's episode, it's available in all the usual places here in the United States. Ian, what about down there in Mexico? What do we got?
You're going to be able to see A Perfect World, if you like, on the two classics, Amazon, or for half the price, twice as nice, Apple TV.
That's called Monsana TV down there. Is that my understanding? Is that my understanding?
That's your understanding.
That is my understanding. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Asked and answered. Seeing here a lot of 5 stars from all the people I follow.
Yeah, I've heard good things about A Perfect World. I was not even aware of this film until we started the podcast.
We're getting into true Eastwood Head territory with A Perfect World. Sounds great. So join us next week for that. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Jonah.
Thank
you, Jonah. That was a lot of fun.
Tremendous pleasure.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks.
And thank you all for listening. Wait, sorry, that's the wrong one. Here we go.